Good day, YouTube. JD here, back for another Wednesday here at the Pagan Perspective. This week's topic is a pretty long question, so I'm going to go ahead and put that down below. But just in short and summary, the question revolves around this travesty of a situation where we have a lot of men in the a lot of men in Hollywood abusing women in some of the most heinous ways that you can ever imagine. And the question was kind of, has this ever happened in the pagan community, and what our individual opinions are here on the Pagan Perspective. In my personal opinion, I feel like the reason for this type of situation is that there's a heavy imbalance in the way things are done, at least here in America, and the way things are structured. Just to touch on the Hollywood thing, to kind of go into it with a little bit more depth, I feel like Hollywood is mostly run by very powerful men, and there's very few women there, so it's very hard for a woman to go and get help when she needs it. It's very hard for a woman to explain to a man that she's experiencing these problems, and in most cases there's situations where these men stick up for each other. They hide these things. They enable this kind of behavior. And it's really sad. It's terrible, and that is kind of where it all stems from. I think it's just a terrible imbalance. There's no one there to kind of empathize with these women. It's almost as if they're being used like food. You know, these people are just don't even care that they're a person. They aren't able to think as if, you know, what if this was my sister? What if this was my mother? What if this was my daughter? They don't think like that. They think of, I'm going to consume them. I'm going to use them sexually. That's the problem. As far as the pagan side of things, I'm more of a solitary, eclectic practitioner, so I haven't really been in a circle where I have had the time or the experience to actually hear if any of this has actually happened in my community. But I will touch on this. There is a link down below that kind of inspired the person to ask the question, and she did mention that she wasn't sure whether or not this kind of thing is happening to gay men because the dynamic is different. And I will say that I believe it's actually more of a situation where you have feminine energy that is being attacked. There are many stories in the gay community where men who call themselves heterosexual will prey on feminine gay men. This happens time and time again. This happens at the workplace. This happens in places of worship. I'm sure if you're out there, you may speak to your gay pagan friends. They may actually talk about this happening in a coven or in a grove or what have you. It seems as if masculine men, whether they identify as being gay or straight, they seem to want to devour feminine energy. It's almost like they're afraid of it in a way, and I believe that could stem from their actual needs to take this energy. One thing I would recommend is that if you haven't already, I would say pick up Rose McGowan's book. I do have it here. I've been going through it for a bit. I think it's an excellent book. It does touch on some of the darker aspects of what's been going on. So, fair warning. It's a bit of a content warning. There are some pretty horrific things that goes on in her experience, and it kind of opens your eyes up. It lets you see this from the perspective of someone who grew up in a cult. So that is automatically a situation where it's male dominant, where you have your freedoms taken away from you just based off of your sex. And it kind of opened my eyes as well, just to see what people have gone through in this country and outside of the bounds of this country. But one thing I would recommend is a good self-defense regimen. I'm going to leave a link down below to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. If you haven't heard of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, because it is an offshoot of the traditional Japanese version, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is really good for people who don't have a lot of strength. It focuses more on leverage, so you don't have to match his strength. A lot of these situations where women or feminine men are assaulted, it kind of happens where the brute strength of this man is, overpowering you. They may even knock you down and fall on top of you. Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is set up where it doesn't matter how strong he is. You're using leverage. You're using these techniques, and there isn't a situation where strength will overpower leverage. It's that solid. So I would definitely say go ahead, follow that link and see if it's worth it for you. There are many people who have saved their lives because they've applied these techniques in an emergency situation. And if you're like most people, a lot of people feel like if your fighting skills are good enough, you shouldn't fall to the ground. The reality is that sometimes things happen. Sometimes you're hit from behind. Sometimes you're drugged. Sometimes they slip something inside of your drink and you don't have the strength, but you have the technical know-how to actually apply these techniques. So just because someone practices kickboxing or Muay Thai or Krav Maga doesn't really mean that they're going to be able to use those techniques from a standing position. That just about does it for me here on the Pagan Perspective for this day. I will see you guys next week, and blessed be.